Welcome to Bobbing Along with Bob and Otto. Join us as we look back at the events of the previous week from a Buddhist perspective. Please note that Otto and I are here for entertainment purposes only. Our opinions are ours and ours alone, and we do not offer any financial, medical, or legal advice. This week, we're looking at how we can best navigate the gnarly and precarious times we live in by looking to ourselves. So let's just jump into it.
It is interesting, though, to think about the internet as a form of a particularly fierce form of samsara, just the becomings and the splashing around samsara as a verb. I was just thinking about that today. It's when we immerse ourselves in the internet, we immediately plunge into all these becomings, and they're non-stop, bam, 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 bam. Remember how the Buddha talked about how quickly the human mind can change, that even he, the master of metaphors and similes and parable, could not come up with a good enough simile for how quickly the human mind can change.
Yes.
And the internet really caters to that, really, really exploits that. And you'll notice when you're doing things, I look at what I'm doing. I try to examine what I'm doing. And it's like I get up and I'm like bopping around and making coffee and whatnot. And then, well, I'll check the internet. And then, bam, for an hour or 2 hours, suddenly you are getting all worked up about this article. And you've got to post that, or somebody responded to another article and you've got to respond. And then you go to the next article and you switch your concerns so quickly, and you get those dopamine hits from, oh, good, they like that. Or you get that great anger. What? How dare this person disagree? How dare this random stranger completely disagree with something on the internet that I only learned 5 minutes ago because I skimmed this article at the Epoch Times or something. And it's really samsara on steroids. And then when you turn away from your screen, you suddenly realize, whoa, where the hell was I? It takes you a while to get back into what is actual reality, the actual reality of the things going on around you, the cat, the rain, the sun, the furniture, things that you're completely unconscious of. So using the internet can be a really good example of becomings, how mind can be drawn off into non-existent realities that they just completely hypnotize you. It's like being in a profound hypnotic trance and you're completely unaware of your surroundings. And so, yeah, when we plunge into the internet, and that gets back to what we were talking before about when we were talking about politics and great racial movements and mass immigration and grand climactics and things like that. And it's like the man said, when you focus on these big generalities, it forces you to extremes. It tends to make you extreme in your thinking. And there's a big difference between throwing an unwanted visitor out of your house and locking the front door and dealing with millions of foreigners coming into your country illegally and shoving them out the door. It's a whole different kettle of fish. And it's not really the same thing. But if you think of it in those terms, you start, well, they've got to go. And they do have to go. But we tend to overlook the human factor in these things in our extremism, which we're not even aware of it. It's simply a consequence of thinking in these samsaric terms. But the internet is the ultimate version of that, if you think about it, because you've got on the internet and your mind can suddenly fill the universe. Suddenly you're worried about quantum effects and the long-term viability of the universe, and that's where your brain is at. And never mind that the cat needs the litter box changed or whatever. Hopefully you're not driving a car or operating heavy machinery. So, yeah, we get caught up in this really made-to-order tailored samsara that we have. There are algorithms that'll make sure it shows us things that we can get good and angry about or good and happy about. Mm. It's interesting when you go around the net and you look at different, because I look at different sites and stuff, and every site caters to the prejudices of its patrons. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's an inevitable thing because that's what drives hits. And again, you get focused on all these short-term little things, those hits, getting those likes. But then, yeah, if you stop using the net, if you step away from it suddenly, it's very interesting to look at what happens to your mind when you're coming out of the net. and looking at real life, and especially when you force yourself not to go back for a while. Stay off of it. I don't go online all that much compared to some people. There are people that live online, basically. Someone was telling me about a few of theirs who he's by any standard kind of definition, a grown man in his 30s, but all he does is sits in his basement and plays video games most of the time, like 8 or 10 hours a day, spending time on the internet. And that's really samsara in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I was scanning around for articles for us to review for this project, and I was thinking about what we've said the last couple of weeks about the difference between groups and individuals, and how you cope things by focusing on you in the now, and you in the now makes a difference to the bigger community rather than the other way around. And I was thinking, all the articles that I came across for the last week were all somehow people trying to score political points from Christmas. I was thinking, it's so boring. At some stage, there comes to a place where you just don't want to go and look for another article. It is actually, how am I participating in this holiday season, in this sort of spirit of giving and celebrating love and families and being together and babies. All those things are so much more relevant than going and reading an article of somebody trying to make a political point.
Yeah. Well, again, that gets back to the internet itself. Yeah. These are the stories that are going to come up because these are the stories that get the hits. And it's very difficult to find anything on the internet or anywhere in any of the different media that is not going to be pushing these buttons. This is the key to success. I saw a thing where somebody was talking about the Washington Post, which just had to lay off 250 more people. It's basically collapsing in on itself. And someone was complaining about how terrible it was there and how it was such a bustling, great place when they could go on about Trump all the time and about COVID lockdowns and stuff. And as long as they had all this fear-mongering they could do, it was wonderful. But then the minute that all was made to go away, but the establishment decided, well, this is all gone now. Well, they didn't really have anything to report on. They're just beating the same dead horses. They'd gone from being any sort of a news organization to basically an entertainment complex. Entertainment the same way country western music is entertaining and making you miserable. They would just do stories to make people frightened and angry. Mm-hmm. And really, there's so many much better people at that. I mean, if you go online and there's dozens of people that will make you frightened and angry, and you don't have to pay a fee to get to the articles and stuff, like you do with the WAPO people. So they really can't compete on that level. Their only real way of competing in the world long term was to be a creditable news source, and they just kind of threw that to the wind. So, but yeah, that's what you're going to find when you go online. When you look for Christmas stories, I mean, you can dig, but it's not going to come up on your search results really quickly. And you can find something about, trimming a tree or a nice gift somebody got. Yeah. Or something like that. I actually posted an interesting article about a Bruegel painting about the census. I don't know if you saw that article or not. That was very interesting because it just gave an interesting analysis of a painting and how it related to bringing Christmas traditions to Europe. Oh. It was like a snowy winter scene, which you probably wouldn't have actually had of the Roman province of Judea. So there are interesting articles. There's a site somewhere, I think, called Just the News or something like that, and all they present is the news. Well, they do their best of it, and they don't throw any or as little interpretation as possible. They just say something like, "Well, so and so said this and it said this today," and that's it. Or it'll say, "Well, so and so said this, and this other senator said, well, no, this instead," and then they just leave it alone. And that's not the kind of news people want anymore. I'm reading that now. It's almost like, well, where's all the bits that are supposed to make, where's all the stuff supposed to be driving your emotion? It's like, this is odd. I want to read analysis, and analysis today means why you should be angry and or afraid, because people like being angry and afraid. Again, we know this, and so yeah, it just draws you further and further into it.
The thing that I've liked this Christmas about being online is that I haven't been looking at articles. I've been interacting with people. Like on Boxing Day, I had a really nice experience of watching this amazing movie with someone and then talking about it. It was so cool. I mean, I was online for hours and hours, like 5 hours or something. I was online, but not scrolling or on social media, but with people, with actual people. And Christmas Day, I listened to Panabasa, like I was saying earlier, Panabasa did a question and answer, and it didn't record properly, and he had to record it, and I listened to it on Christmas Day, and it was so nice. It was him doing a question and answer session, so he had all these people of his community all asking him different points of view, and all being really interested and coming from different places. And then there he was making this response to all these different people coming from his point of view. And that was such a really wonderful community exercise for me. I mean, I'm not part of that community, but watching that video and seeing that community work was a completely different internet experience. Have you caught that video, Otto?
No, I haven't. I've fallen way behind on watching videos. Started out last summer, and I haven't really caught up with much of anything. I barely watch our videos, and I'm way behind on watching your videos and poor Pineapple videos. I don't even watch the ones I make with him. But I do enjoy his Q&A videos when I do catch them. And I know he went from just having like a handful of questions to, now he's got videos that take an hour and a half or 2 hours because he gets questions.
Gosh, there was some great in-depth questions. Yeah. So, not just all softball stuff. There was anyway, I don't have it at my fingertips. Subjects.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You get some very erudite people online about Buddhism, and they are looking for answers. And they like when they can find someone who actually knows what he's talking about. And I was just actually thinking about Panyabasa as he is an excellent source for knowledge of the Vinaya, because I was thinking about, my brother's been talking about a story with Aleister Crowley in Japan. There was one point where Crowley was considering becoming a Buddhist monk. I don't really think it would have worked very well. And it would have been a Japanese Buddhist Soto or something, Mahayanist heretical stuff. But I was going to suggest to him if he wanted to consult someone on like the minutiae of the rules for monks, in their lifestyle, or any fine points of the Panyabasa would be the guy to talk to, because he does have a very in-depth knowledge of that, and it was something he always had a great interest in the course of his monastic career. So he's able to answer those sorts of questions, and if there's someone that can answer those questions, people will find them. Also get some very in-depth questions too, I notice in his group when he does his live stream Q&As. But the nice thing about Panyabasa is that if you you can write him, ask a question in the comment section, and he will get to your question eventually.
Right.
Put it out, he stops taking the questions after a certain point. I don't blame the guy.
Yeah.
I think they can only run that computer for so long on solar power up there too.
Oh, really?
But he tries to keep to that 1 hour. He talks for about 20 minutes. Yeah, up there, he's off the grid. They have solar power to do the computer, and they have a slight link. They have no cables or electric lines or anything. They heat with wood. Yeah.
Wow, that's really wilderness mind, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll go up there for a retreat sometime. That's like a future would like to do bucket list. Yeah. You go up there for a while. Good. Even have a position there where you can be a monastic caretaker. I think I'd be good at that because I've taken care of monks. Well, I took care of Panyabasa. It's just monks need somebody there to do certain things for them, like prepare food, offer them food. PB and I would go out and get breakfast, but he couldn't eat anything unless I bought it and offered it to him. So that can be as much as setting a cup of coffee down on the table and keeping my finger on it until he touches his finger to it, and then it's considered offered.
Oh, really?
And one, yeah. So there are some foods that don't need to be offered at certain times, but for the most part. So he'd be like, hey, get up, it's almost noon. We got to go get breakfast. Because when I got there, I otherwise would just eat the food there, which is there's plenty of food there, but he likes American food, so we'd go and get maple bacon donuts and things like that.
Right.
And of course, it's just, when it's your palates, it's all sorts of things like, here, coffee, whoops, just kidding. Here, have some, whoops, just kidding. No, I never did that much. But yeah, they have a thing where they have like monastic caretakers, so he's preparing the food and offering it to the monks and doing stuff like that. That'd be an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. And they say you have access to their library, you got a lot of time to meditate, time to study the Dhamma, but I don't know, something like that would be quite an investment in time, but I wouldn't mind going up there for like a week or 2 week.
Oh, really?
Kind of retreat.
Say 3 months, okay.
Well, 3 months, I would like, 3 months is the thing. I think that would be more like the monastic caretaker thing that they have, their website and check, but that's like a long-term thing. But before I did something like that, I'd probably go for a week or 2, just give it a little try and get to know people and stuff. But
so is that one of the monasteries, Otto? Is that why they have monasteries? Is to provide a place for lay people to take a break from, or is it more just their own lifestyle? I mean, I've often wondered with monks is how much is it their lifestyle and how much is it a calling of service to others?
Well, that's an interesting point and something Panasa would be really good at talking about. But as I understand it, one of the what's the word I'm groping for? One of the debates in early Buddhism, one of the controversies, was about monks living in the forest as opposed to coming into towns and living in monasteries. And supposedly Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin and archenemy, tried to set up his own Sangha. He was one of the first Buddhist heretics. And Devadatta said to the monks, the thing about Devadatta, he wanted to be even stricter than the Buddha on the monks. So the Buddha's like, you've got to do this and this. And he's like, oh, stricter. And one of the things that they wanted was that monks should just live in the forest. They should never come into town. They shouldn't gather in monasteries. They should just be forest hermit dwellers. But I don't think the purpose of monasteries was necessarily focused on lay people as such, although that does provide a connection between the Sangha and the lay. I think it had to do, and again, Panyabasa would be the guy to talk to about this, because he's a lot better at the history, or Punadamo for that matter. But I think the monasteries were a time when, especially during the rains retreat, we talk about the Vasa, the rains retreat. There, I don't know if you ever lived in a country that has rains, like a rainy season. But when it rains, travel's impossible. You have to stay somewhere. So this is a place where monks could gather during that time, meditate. There's other things monks need to do in a group, making their robes. The Katina festival, which is now a presentation of robes to monks, originally was when monks made their robes. In fact, one very, very long-term project is that movie I made of Panibasa making his own robe, which he's probably the only monk in the continental U.S. and possibly in the world who actually made his own robe for Katina that year. I think very few do. And I took way too much footage. I have hours and dozens and dozens and dozens of photos and hours of footage of the whole project, which I did make a trailer for it. I made like a coming attractions short thing that I posted, but I have yet to actually put that together. But I do intend to do that sometime. So that's a long-term project that I have to get to.
Gosh, I'd see that. I'd love to see that. Wow.
Well, I can share a link with you later on for the coming attractions for it, which I thought the trailer was actually pretty good to make. But yeah, I have to sit down with the footage and then sit down with Panibasa and get him to do some narration over it and stuff. But yeah, it was very, very. But yeah, but I think the monasteries were necessary for the monks to get together. There's some things that monks had to do as a group. There's certain things that the Sangha does as a group, ordination of monks. There's certain activities they do that I don't understand. There's certain acts of the Sangha that the monks do as a group, things like that. There was a time when I've been given to understand that the Thai government pressed monks into service as teachers to help create an educational system in Thailand. The monasteries would donate land and enact as teachers and things like that. But the main path of Buddhism was originally very much a path for people that were already on the path. The Buddha was a mendicant, an ascetic that was in the forest with a lot of, he had the 5 brethren, his buddies there that were hanging with him. And there was no such thing as Buddhism then. The Buddha was still the Bodhisattva, and he was still trying to figure things out. He hadn't rediscovered the path yet as such. But a lot of people were looking, and this was a very normal course of action. People were doing yoga, and they were doing meditations, and they were attaining different mental states. Some of them very skilled, but they weren't what the Buddha was looking for, kind of deal. So when he finally came up with the Four Noble Truths, realized the Four Noble Truths, and started teaching. We talked about the Five Brethren first, and then started teaching other people. This was a teaching for these guys that had already been out in the forest for years and years and years. And remember, they'd been with him out in the forest for his, 6 years of austerities, and they were practicing the austerities as well. So the teachings weren't originally, you weren't going to go into a village and tell some guy that was like just trying to mend his fishing nets and, do whatever and grow his crops and keep his buffalo out of the rice fields and this, and just all caught up in samsara and say, hey, let me tell you about these Four Noble Truths sort of deal. It's not that people like that shouldn't hear this, but that's not who he was talking to originally. But as his message spread, I think lay people got more interested in it. And so it sort of expanded that way. So I don't think that the Sangha was planned out to be specifically a service organization. It was a way to help people organize so that they could find release, so that they could wake up, they could work on their own minds, work on the Dhamma. And Buddhism's always been sort of like that. It's never been like go out and try to get people to practice the Dhamma. It's like, we're practicing the Dhamma. If you want to practice the Dhamma, this is how you do it. Yeah. And lay people began being attracted too, and they got the attention of like kings. That's always problems for religion. And of course, there's other aspects to it as well. Of course, Buddhism did coexist with other religious traditions, other philosophical and mystical traditions. And we're reading something where they were again, archaeological evidence is different from the literary evidence sometimes. But one thing I thought was interesting was they were talking about the development of Buddhism in the what they call the Greco-Buddhist countries, basically the Greek countries, that the successor states to Alexander. There were still Hellenistic kingdoms operating in what they called India, what we would today call, I guess Pakistan and northwestern India, way after the collapse of, they say the last Hellenistic kingdom was Egypt, but there were still Hellenistic kingdoms operating, and there were a lot of Buddhists in these, including what they call Greco-Buddhists. And of course, we all know that it was the Greeks that introduced the tradition of statuary of the Buddha. All those Buddha statues that we see all over the place in the East, originally Buddhists did not use statues. It was what they called aniconic, non-iconic icons. So they would just use like an empty chair, or just a Dhamma wheel, or footprints. I always like that, just footprints. In other words, he trod on the terra. He was here, but we're not doing that, looking at the idols here. We're working on the Dhamma, and we're not thinking about the Buddha. We're thinking about his teachings, kind of deal. The Greeks love statues, and everybody really likes statues. So the Greco-Buddhists started making statues, and everybody's like, yeah, this is cool. Now we've got statues like everybody else. Yeah. But one of the things as I recall, was that they had found that Buddhism, just from the archaeological evidence, I really need to research this, so I'm probably going to be a bit inaccurate here. It's a good thing nobody ever watches these videos.
People watch videos, Otter.
Well, that's something. Well, they're not as critical as they might be. But as I recall, what they were saying was basically that the archaeological remains seem to indicate that Buddhism didn't have a very high social status in the country at that time until the Greeks got involved in it. And that seemed to coincide with the growth of interest in Buddhism by higher class people, higher echelons, including rulers, kings, and such like that. And you get to a point where the monasteries started getting a lot of money. And that's when it always gets sticky for any religion, when it gets too successful, and when it gets government approval and government help.
Yes, that's always a death knell, isn't it? Thanks, government.
Once more.
Well, so it was very, very interesting what you said, that the first people that the Buddha preached to were like top level, like experts.
Yeah. Other ascetics, yeah.
Yes. So, like, that was making me think that what you're doing, the community that you're building with Navakavada, is a completely different type of teaching from those first teachings. you're really going to first principles, aren't you?
Well, when you're talking to lay people,
Mm-hmm.
and Navakavada and all the things we talk about, all aimed at people who are not monastics, people that are living everyday lives in the world, who are householders, and you have to put up with a certain amount of samsara. It's part of the territory. You can't get away from it. But you're still going to say the same things. The truth of the Dhamma doesn't change, but they talk about the Buddha's graduated discourse, like a graduated cylinder. You present the ideas to people, but you don't present them in the same way. And well, like when the Buddha said, well, here are precepts for lay people. He gave the 5 precepts as a basic way for lay people to be able to function in society, but at the same thing be as skillful and as harmless as possible. And I've heard it said that these precepts are basically, this is the default human level of ethics and morality. If you maintain your 5 precepts, then you're acting like a human being should, and this is enough to guarantee you at least a human birth when you go to take another birth after this life. So I think when you're talking to people that aren't monastics, you're not going to be throwing at them the kind of really sophisticated. You don't get into all the very sophisticated theological arguments about the anatta doctrine, not self and self and that. But you're going to talk about things being skillful or unskillful, and about basically your karma, the fact that you make decisions in your life, and this is going to affect your life, that you have a great deal of power over this. And the more harmless you can be, the less harmed you will be. And then you can build up from. So I see what anyone does who's talking to non-monastics, people that aren't forest ascetics, people that are just trying to get through in life. You're telling them about the same stuff, but you're telling it to them in a different way, and at the level they need to hear it at. It has to be graduated. You have to talk to people in a language that they understand. It's like talking to someone who speaks French. You have to speak French to them. It doesn't do you much good to speak in Italian. They might get a word here or there, and German's going to be right out. But so yeah, you've got to speak in a language that people understand on a level that they can grasp. But whatever you tell them, it's going to be in line with the Dhamma, no matter what. Okay. And there's plenty in the Dhamma at every level for everyone. But the Buddha was originally not talking to lay people. Like I said, it was people that were also in the forest practicing. And if he said, hey, let's all go do a week-long fast. Yeah, nothing to it. These guys are like, yeah, nothing to it. Fasting, sitting on hot rocks. Not at all. So, listen, we're going to discipline our minds that way. All right, I've been doing this for 15 years. I think let's do that. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's a great meditation tool. So, but the Buddha was the sort of guy that could go back and discuss step by step for people that were not quite as advanced. Some of the people he was talking to, he would give them Dhamma talk, and in part this is no doubt due to the fact that the Buddha was quite the preacher, but also the fact is that the first people he talked to were already practitioners that were already pretty advanced along the path.
Nice.
So there's, as a Buddhist would say, you've got a lot of karma that is coming to fruition when you attain to that. So it wasn't just the Buddha, it was the fact that the people's karma was able to manifest itself, come to fruition at that through the Buddha. Now, it's not to say we take the metaphor of watering the seeds of karma. Well, yes, I will admit that when the Buddha watered the seeds, it's not just water, but he's giving you plant food and a heat lamp, like extra CO2 and all the stuff that you would get to help your seed along. But the seed still has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow, well, that was a fantastic Christmas talk. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everyone who's come past and had a listen and joined us for our little bobbing along chat today. And this is the very last one of 2023. And of course, in January 2024, I'm going to be off to South Africa on my great big pilgrimage. So next year is going to be bringing a lot of interesting things for me. And at the end of this year, I think I'd just like to wish you, Otto, and to everybody who's supported us during this past year, wish you a happy new year and a happy 2024, and may all your dreams come true. And thanks for listening, and we will see you again next year.
Bobbing along. bobbing along, bob, bob, bobbing, bob, bob, bobbing, bobbing along, bobbing along.